You are Locked On Bulls Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Chicago on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Bulls Postcast here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button. We go live after every single Bulls, Bears, Cubs, and Notre Dame game. The Bulls lose this one to the Pistons Sunday afternoon, 127-119 to move to 21-29 on the season. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. So this is a ugly game for the Bulls. They've had a lot of them. A lot of turnovers, 26 points off turnovers for the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons are the third team this year, which is an unbelievable stat in itself for it to happen one time. 80 points in the paint. So we'll talk about that in the first segment for what happened against the Bulls today. The offense just goes missing. Vuce doesn't score in the second quarter. They have two stretches in the second quarter where they don't score for 4 minutes. It's only a 12-minute quarter. That can't happen. And we'll wrap up the show with the best and worst. And you know what? We're going to talk a little bit about the fallout for the Bulls because of the Luka Doncic trade to the Los Angeles Lakers, which is still one of the most stunning things I've ever seen in my life in sports. But I think it's going to affect the Bulls. So we'll get into that in the final segment of the show. Look, this is a turnover party for the Bulls. They have 7 turnovers in the first quarter. So immediately, ball handling, everything, lazy passes, terrible passes, all of it is on full display for the Chicago Bulls. They end up with 20 turnovers in the game. They had 13 at the end of the first half, I believe it was. It was just bad basketball. I mean, multiple times in this game where it's not just one turnover. It's a turnover immediately followed by another turnover on the next possession. At one point in the game, they had 3 turnovers within 25 seconds. That sounds impossible to do that. So you're turning the ball over. You have two possessions, which you don't even get the ball to the inbounds. So that's incredible. The first one is one of the laziest passes I've ever seen a basketball player make. So 2 turnovers off of inbound passes is stunning to see in a basketball game. The Bulls were just sloppy throughout. I mean, it's not just bad passes. It's bad decision making. It's just bad dribbling. It's all of it. And they just were giving the ball to the Pistons at will. And they said it there at the end of the broadcast. I think it's fair. Like, you could label this as a winnable basketball game. In the fourth quarter, you had it down to 7 points. You started the game on an 8-2 run. You know, Lonzo hits a 3, so like you're moving to start the game. But then things just unraveled in the way a lot of Bulls games have this year. And look, this is a team in which the Bulls actually have a size mismatch. And yes, you're missing Zach LaVine. We find out pretty early into the game, we get the official notice that Jalen Smith is going to miss this game for the Bulls. And of course, Dalen Terry ends up having to leave the game and miss the rest of the game as well. So you're down 3 of your guys, but the Pistons just beat you up in the paint. And this is not a big basketball team, but they scored 80 points in the paint in this one. Outscored the Bulls 80-44 in this game. The third time this year the Bulls have allowed 80 points in the paint against the team. That is remarkable to happen one time in a season. To happen 3 times. It's not like Jalen Smith solves those problems or Zach LaVine and Dalen Terry. It's Vooch, who I like Vooch a lot. I really do. But when the broadcast is having to spend like 4 minutes of the broadcast talking about how if you don't get this guy involved on offense, he basically doesn't try on defense, that says a lot about who you are as a basketball player too. So as much as I like Vooch, when it's just that obvious that he's not getting touches on offense, that he doesn't try on defense, that they're openly calling it out, and they're blaming the Bulls players, which I think is also hilarious, that they're blaming everyone else. Like, yes, get Vooch the ball. They don't control his effort on defense. He's a huge part of the reason why the Pistons had 80 points, and he got frustrated again. We've seen Vooch be a lot more frustrated recently, and I think you can tell the losing's getting to him a little bit. Maybe it's the deadline rumors as well, but look, he's not getting calls in the paint. Isaiah Stewart's getting away with anything he wants in this game. They're way too handsy with him. There's a lot of stuff that could be calls, but they really let the Pistons just play, and the Bulls struggled to adapt to that. They got too in their head, it felt like, most of this game, to where every single time the Pistons were all over them, they just kind of would unravel, and that's where you would see these passes. You do have, I think it was 2 shot clock violations as well, and that's just all just dribble. Like, there's like a team that can pass the ball very well. Like, they pass the ball pretty well, pretty often this season. It's the one thing they do, I think, effectively as a team. We see them have multiple games this year. It feels like all the time where they're 25, 30 assists in a game. So they share the ball well. That seemed to go away in this game versus the Pistons. So I don't know if that's the frustrations themselves with the turnovers, with the fact that buckets are just not going in, but they just are playing the worst version of Bulls basketball again in this game. And this is what Bulls basketball really has become. These ranges of quality versus terrible basketball in back-to-back games are something that, you can tell that's why they're not a good team. They just can't consistently play on the same level every single day. And they also do seem, I think this is like their second or third, these like 2 o'clock start afternoon games that they've really struggled in. I don't know what's going on. I know Josh Giddey said, there was a report from Casey Johnson that Josh Giddey was texting everyone last night about the Luka trade. So maybe like the rest of us, they weren't sleeping much last night and they just came out a little flat in this game. But they just didn't play. They played pretty terrible basketball. There's really no other way to spin it in this one. They played terrible basketball in this game. You cannot have as many turnovers as you did. And the fact that it was even, 7 turnovers in the first quarter and you're up by 5. But then you see what happens the rest of the game. I mean, and really it's the second quarter. The second quarter is obviously the big problem that really cost the Bulls to be outscored 19-34. And like I said, to have 2 4-minute stretches in a 12-minute quarter in which you don't score, you're just not going to win basketball games that way. You're going to put yourself in a hole that you're not going to be able to get yourselves away from them. And just largely bad defense, I would say as well. I mean, these turnovers weren't just that they were happening. The Pistons were taking advantage of them all the time. And it also, in the fourth quarter there, as they started to try to close this game out or, get this game closer, and when they got down to 7, the Pistons just had an answer for every single thing that the Bulls were doing, whether it was Cade Cunningham or Duren or any of these guys out there. They were just hitting all their shots pretty much at will against you, and the Bulls just played pretty poor defense in this game, not just in the paint, but overall, bad basketball team today. That's what the Chicago Bulls were. There's really no other way to spin it. They were just not good. You can't have that many turnovers in a game and allow 26 points off of, 26 points conceded off of turnovers, 20 turnovers themselves, also 22 points on fast breaks from the Pistons total. So they're just all over the Bulls in this one. All right, in the next segment, let's talk about this offense. They just went MIA in the second quarter. Multiple reasons why. Also some terrible shooting from Coby White in this game that we're going to hit on in the next segment, because it wasn't just the defense and the turnovers themselves that were the problem. The offense was a huge part of the reason why the Chicago Bulls lost this game as well. We'll get into that next year on the Locked On Bulls postcast on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. Basketball season is heating up, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in award winnings, PrizePicks makes it easy and fun to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Here's how it works. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. This week, I'll be looking at, again, I'm always looking at Nikola Vucevic, what he's got, where his numbers are for points and rebounds, overall points, rebounds, assists in a game. Always looking at Vuce for me, just because he's going to get his no matter what. They have the Taco Tuesday promo that gives you discounted player projections and even more value. Bunch of great stuff on PrizePicks. Check out the promo tab to tail any of the super sweet Millie Winners big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes for 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, so in the second quarter, Nikola Vucevic doesn't take a shot. It seems like a bad idea, right? Still ends up with his 6th career triple-double. We'll mention that again in the final segment for the best and worst as he tries to showcase his skills to potentially be traded by next Thursday, which again we'll talk about in the final segment of the show as well, because I think the Lakers will be an ideal destination for him now. But Vooch doesn't shoot in the second. It's one thing to not score and to be bad. It's another thing to just not have your best player take any shots against a team that is you have a size mismatch against. But Isaiah Stewart, even when Vooch was out there, really just making things hectic for him. I think the comparison to a Draymond Dennis Rodman kind of player. It fits well for him. Obviously just came off a suspension, has suspended, I think 2 times before this as well. So not something that is too surprising, but a super physical basketball player that was just really causing problems for Vooch and was making it harder for him just to get the ball. Some of the turnovers, it feels like quite a few of them, were trying to get the ball to Vooch, that he couldn't get in good position. And instead of the players, trying to get to the side that, Isaiah Stewart wasn't on as much, they were going right into him, and the ball was just getting knocked away when they were trying to feed Vooch in the paint. But he hasn't scored in the second quarter. He played 8 minutes of it. So it's not like he wasn't out there. He was out there for like 3 minutes and didn't score. He played, a majority of the second quarter. They also had 2 stretches where they didn't, they showed on the screen, it's like 344, 342 both times, but they didn't score right away, where the Bulls just went 2 stretches where 4 minutes without scoring a bucket in a quarter. I mean, to have 2 stretches like that is an abomination, is the only way to put it. That is terrible basketball for the Bulls. To just not be able to get even 1 bucket in 2 4-minute stretches is going to be why you get outscored, 34-19 in the second. And at that point, that was it for the Bulls. They made good efforts to try to come back in this game. They had chances to, get it back down to 7 points and really try to make a game out of this thing in the third and the fourth. But then the Pistons would just answer, and the Bulls could just never, separate that run. But the second quarter is really where things were just, it put the game out of reach for the Bulls in this game. You just can't have that. I mean, even without Zach LaVine and Jalen Smith, to have 2 stretches like that, it's just hard to even know what the answer would be, because it's not like obviously they're not shooting for 4 minutes. A lot of their shots just aren't going in. But this is where I think the ball movement issues that we saw in the game. In one of those stretches was the first 24-second shot clock violation, where the Bulls are just totally unaware of kind of like what's going on around them. It feels like that they're just dribbling it out and making passes, but just really doing nothing efficiently with the basketball. So that's how you're going to get 4-minute stretches, is when you're just dribbling it out most of the possession and just ended up jacking up terrible shots. And it feels like that's what the Bulls are doing in the second quarter. And I don't know how Billy Donovan, let's say 4 minutes into Vooch not touching or shooting the basketball in the second quarter. So when there's in theory 4 minutes left, 4.5 minutes left is in theory here within the second quarter, why not call a timeout and be like, hey, guys, pass the ball to Vooch. Let's do something to get him open. And we saw, a couple of them there in the fourth quarter too, where they're trying to just run these pick and rolls, and it's just they're not getting anything out of it. They're not. The Pistons are they know what's coming. The Bulls' offense felt very predictable. I think the way I would put it is that yes, they were trying to run pick and roll stuff for Vooch there in the fourth quarter as they were trying to come back from this big deficit that they had. But the Pistons knew exactly what was coming, so the screens were barely even being set because the Pistons were just moving away from it, and they just knew the whole time, basically, it was no problem for them. And then in the fourth quarter, we finally saw Coby White show up for the first time in this game. He was brutal, and he ends up with tie for the most points, or with the most points for the Bulls in this game, 22 points on the night, but he was 5 of 17 from the field. And 9 of his points came from the free throw line, 3 of 10 from the three-point line. So coming off of a night where he had a good performance offensively, follows that up with a total dud. Josh Giddey taking way too many threes. Again, 3 for 8. I can get Coby White going 3 for 10 and Lonzo Ball going 3 for 8 from the three-point line. Josh Giddey shouldn't be going 3 for 8 from the three-point line. He can cut to the hoop. Zach said it right early on in the show in the chat. He said he did like how much Giddey was cutting on offense. No one else cuts. And that was a huge problem for the Bulls tonight. They're all just standing there watching. But Giddey is the only one, a lot of times, that's cutting to the hoop. But he's taking way too many threes. And I know that some of that's by design, by the teams that are playing them, that they're going to over-rotate to, Patrick Williams or anyone else that's on the court pretty much that's not named Giddey, so that way he takes open shots. But he just takes that many shots. It's just not where he's going to be at his most effective in a game. And if you see Josh Giddey, it feels like, I don't know what the number is. Maybe I'll be bored one night and do a deep dive on this. But I feel like my guess is on a night when Josh Giddey takes more than 6 threes, the Bulls lose. That's going to be my guess, is that a night where he is actively involved from the three-point line, because it's not like he's begging to rip these threes and try to become a three-point shooter like it felt like maybe after the first couple games of the year he was going to try to be. A lot of times he is taking them by necessity, and just by late in the shot clock, he's the only guy that's open. There's no one around him, so he kind of has to shoot by default because he's just so open. If you don't take him, then you'll always be like that because you're not a threat at all. So sometimes you do have to take the shots just to not be, like Russell Westbrook at times, where teams will just play so far off Westbrook because they know he's never actually going to shoot them and make them. I mean, Giddey did go 3 for 8, so it's not the worst percentage in the world, obviously, but just too much. So to have Giddey, taking that many threes, Vooch to be that inactive in the second, and Coby White just to be ripping shots left and right. This is another game where as the Bulls stand today, pre-deadline, you can tell they're just missing Zach LaVine. Like this is where you're missing that dude that can score for you. And while there's been some really positive moments that we'll hit on more in the next segment, again, with Modest Buzelis and Patrick Williams in their newfound roles with this team, for the most part, the Bulls miss Zach LaVine a ton. And this is kind of, again, a reminder of what potentially this team is going to look like next Saturday after the first game, after the trade deadline, assuming nothing big happens with this upcoming back-to-back here. And you never know. We're seeing the Mavs get run over. It was 91-38 at some point. I swear that's the score I saw, where the Mavs just have nobody on their team right now. So they're just getting run over by the Cavs. So my guess is the Bulls get active just on Thursday, and we're going to hit on that a little bit in the final segment of the show. So we're going to do our best and worst moments of today's Bulls loss, 127-119 to the Detroit Pistons. So many turnovers, so many bad shots, so many missed shots is the reason why the Bulls lost this game. So we'll hit on all that next, the best and worst. And like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about Vooch now because it feels like his trade market could be dramatically affected by what broke at 11:30 Central Time last night. We'll get into that next year on the Locked On Bulls postcast on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. Looking for tickets for your next big event, whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sports game, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. But with Gametime Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Gametime Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. I've been using Gametime Picks for a while now. Here's why I love it. They got the curated deals. I recently grabbed a super deal for a prime seat. Used that for when we took my son to his first basketball game. I couldn't believe the value. It's total steal. Get that little alert when you're looking at the app that shows you what are the super deals deal. The seat view feature is a game changer. Before I even hit buy, I can see exactly what my seat will look like in the venue, so it's reassuring. Always tell people if they're going to Wrigley for the first time, for whatever reason, and I know them, use the seat view because you want to make sure you're not stuck behind a giant pole impeding your view of the entire baseball game. And the best part, you're covered with Gametime's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they will refund 100%, 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, best and worst moments of the game. Worst moments, all the turnovers. The 2 shot clock violations. Those are bad. Don't want those. But all the turnovers, all the missed shots. So let's do the best moments of this game before we talk about Vooch here, because we're gonna find the positives in a game like this. Because once the trade deadline's passed and the Bulls have hopefully blown it up and they're playing their young guys a lot, I think these shows are actually gonna be a lot more fun. Because we're talking about all the good things that happen in losses with the young players. So Patrick Williams, we'll start there. His 4th game in a row with double-digit points coming off the bench. So this role for him clearly is working well. Now, I think Stacey King's pushing it a little bit by even mentioning the name of people like Jamal Crawford coming off the bench. I know you're trying to be excited, Stacey. I know you're excited to see what he's doing. Let's pump the brakes a little bit on Patrick Williams, one of the best 6 men ever in Jamal Crawford. We don't need to be throwing those names out there because it is crazy expectations to put on a player that, yes, is playing much better in the 7th man, the 7th guy into the game for the Bulls. But he ain't that guy. He's not going to be that guy. He might be a really effective role player on the team now. I still think we'll end up seeing him back in the starting lineup, most likely after the deadline because, well, he might just be the number 1 option after they trade everybody. But he is looking much more comfortable out there. So again, like even in this loss, he's playing better. 4 straight game with double-digit points off the bench. That's a positive for the Bulls when you think about the long-term ramifications of where this season's going, what this team's going to be. Because again, I think it would be almost impossible to trade Patrick Williams unless some team sees what he's doing right now off the bench and saying, you know what, we can use that. Like that is someone that like off the bench we think works for us in the playoffs. I doubt it. I think he's just a Bull for at least the next year. Maybe we'll be having a different conversation at the deadline next season on these shows, but it's working well for him. Now, Modest Buzelis, 3rd straight game, first time in his career with double-digit points. Again, looks super comfortable shooting the basketball right now. Hit another 3 today with a guy in his face. Really nice layup there at the end, even though I know it's garbage time, but a couple nice cutting baskets for him in this game. Like he's figuring it out, being the 6th man off the bench. And this is something that, like, where I do agree with Stacey King, where it's like the more he plays, the more comfortable he's going to get. And it is, to me, again, the most interesting part of the Bulls season. The rest of the year is just the continued development and growth of Modest Buzelis, the confidence that we see from him, what it starts as the beginning of the year, having to do some G League stints, and then now at this point, like what it can be going forward. So that, again, I think is a good thing for the Bulls right now. It's just seeing that Modest Buzelis continues to look good as the 6th man off the bench. And unlike Patrick Williams, who, like, I'm assuming Vooch, LaVine both get traded here at the deadline, probably gets forced back into the starting rotation there, and where he'll be a main option. So he can kind of take what he's doing now and excel in that, where you still get the same kind of result of basically playing with bench players as starters, because that's really where the Bulls will likely be at after the deadline. That role will change. I don't think this one will. I don't think we'll see Modest Buzelis be thrust into the starting lineup, at least right away after the deadline. Now, I do think when you think about the hope for this season, where this goes after the trade deadline, is that you hope that Buzelis plays his way into the starting rotation. That you do see the minutes growth continue, the confidence to continue to grow and be better, and him to shoot the ball better than his G League stats probably would have told us that we would have seen as early as we are right now for him. So that's another positive from this game, and a personal positive as we transition here to the final part of today's show. Nikola Vucevic, his 6th career triple-double. That might take that one back because I think that assist they gave him was a little kind. So one of those stats things, or if you have him in fantasy basketball, you might want to keep a check on there when they go back and look at that one. But 6th career triple-double for Nikola Vucevic in this game. Now, last night was crazy. When someone makes a trade and the immediate reaction from all of Twitter is, did Shams Charania get hacked? It's a wild deal. Maybe the most stunned I've been from a tweet, a moment, honestly, since Andrew Luck retired. Seeing Luka Doncic get traded to the Los Angeles Lakers for Anthony Davis. But why does that pertain to the Bulls? Well, who's playing center for the Lakers now? Like what is their plan? And I think this game, again, shows you like what he might not give you defensively. LeBron can cover some of that stuff for them. Now, this might be one of the worst defenses in the league if they run out Vooch and Luka on any given night. But Nikola Vucevic now makes so much sense to the Los Angeles Lakers. It makes a ton of sense for them of what they need, where they go from here with this roster. You just don't really have a big man on that team. So if they're not hell-bent on getting a defensive-minded center at the deadline, it does feel like no matter what, the Lakers are going to make one more move. And if they're going to make one more move, and it's not for a guy like Walker Kessler, and they don't want to give up that remaining first-round pick that they now have, I think Vooch makes so much sense for them. Zach LaVine's been brought up too with them. Now, I don't see it happening. But if I was the Lakers, I would be curious about LaVine too. Like, I don't know how it works with Luka, LaVine, and LeBron, but that'd be another one too with, like, now that this big move has happened, it feels like it's open season in the NBA. I mean, if you've seen, like, the Phoenix Suns stuff from last night, where Devin Booker and KD and all these guys, like, they learned about the trade as it happened, their reactions after the game, just feels like this is now like one of the most stunning moments that's ever happened in the NBA. Maybe the most since Chris Paul was traded to the Lakers and then it got vetoed. Obviously, this one's not getting vetoed by Adam Silver, but if I was the Bulls and I was AK in the front office, like that's the number one team I'm going to be calling about Vooch, because it just seems to be the one that, for me, makes the most sense. Like, they need a center. The Bulls want to trade Nikola Vucevic. The Bulls want to get as much as they possibly can for him. I think it's the perfect marriage. Like, I think it's the perfect one for both sides. That I don't know what this Lakers team is this year. Honestly, now, like, Luka's been hurt, but like they're gonna try to go all in. It feels like with this run. So if the Bulls are now, as the trade deadline gets closer and closer, and the Bulls continue to be on the borderline of being out of the play-in. I mean, they're now, with this loss, a half game ahead of the Philadelphia 76ers for the final play-in spot. If that's really like the goal of the organization, is to be a play-in team, then they're going to keep it together unless they get the right price. And that's what it has felt like for a while. That's like, unless they get the right price, they're going to stand pat. Like, I wonder if this trade, like, it creates a different market across the league. And that's what I'm kind of hoping for. It is the thing that gets the NBA the most, like with ratings down and everything. The interest level seems to spike the most around the trade deadline and in the offseason. So I wonder like if we're going to see some other big moves happen now as counterpunches to what the Lakers and I guess what the Mavs are trying to sell us, which is this is a win now move for them. And they pretty much think Luka Doncic is too fat to win a championship. That's pretty much what the reports have said. Like, there's no other way to cut it. They basically said he's too fat, he's hurt too often. We don't want to give him a supermax next offseason, so we're not paying him. And we're going to get Anthony Davis, who's often hurt also, but a monster offensively and defensively, as we know in Chicago, like from what he was as a high school kid to what he became in the NBA. But I don't know. I'm still stunned that it happened, but my immediate thought, like once like the shot kind of wore off last night, was like, oh, Nikola Vucevic to the Los Angeles Lakers would make a ton of sense. So we'll probably sprinkle that stuff in. We got two more shows, two more postcast shows, Tuesday and Wednesday night before the deadline gets here. I think we actually will see the return of Zach LaVine before the trade deadline, which surprises me a little bit, just in case you are going to try to trade him to put him back in the lineup. Surprised he's not just staying at home with the new baby to stay healthy during this stretch, but maybe they want to give him one final showcase. So that will do it for us for this episode of the Locked On Bulls Postcast. Hit that subscribe button if you're listening on the audio. Come on over to YouTube. We go live. We'll take your comments. We'll read them all. We'll react to it. What's going on with your Chicago Bulls? It's going to be a very different season, it feels like, next Saturday, 6 days from now, when the Bulls have their first game after the NBA trade deadline. So we'll talk to you Tuesday and Wednesday night for this back-to-back here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.